what's up, all my jokers? We are now in the second month of 2025. I hope everyone's been living their best life and continuing their New Year's resolutions. For all our anime, all the older anime watchers out there, the passage of time is starting to hit pretty hard. Yeah, a lot of us are probably starting to feel that graceful nostalgia of the older animes we watched and start rewatching them. And you probably noticed nowadays we're starting to get a lot of remakes of some of those older animes, such as like Spice and Wolf, and we had Berserk a while back. And I know we're all praying for more. So I decided to divulge a list, I believe, of anime that should be getting a reboot or remake. It's my personal opinion. If anyone else has different opinions, feel free to say. I made a list of anime that I wish had a reboot, remake, or at least a continuation. This list got into like the 200s. And of course I can't spend the entire video talking about 200 different anime. So I just dropped it down to 10 for now. Probably do the rest in another video. Again, this is going to be my own personal opinion. If you like the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any other anime that you believe should also be added in, please leave a comment down below. I'm not going to get much into the very animes themselves, just really talk about why I think they deserve a reboot or remake, and probably divulge a lot of differences in what should have been changed. So with all that said, we'll get right into it on the very first one. See you guys later in this video. Alright, first up on the list, surprising possibly absolutely no one that's watched this anime and hasn't lived under a rock, Akame ga Kill. The awesome, very dark adult anime with a backstory of assassination and tragedy. The very first episode, we all get hooked, we all get into it. Some of us probably went straight to reading the manga right after. But towards the second half of the anime, we start seeing a lot of tragic moments. Pacing starts going all over the place. A lot of characters that shouldn't have died. And a lot of stories that's just left uninterpreted and not told. And all in all, the second half of it had a very rushed ending compared to the manga. I personally like sticking with the original source of anime, such as like a manga or a novel. I believe those are the reasons they actually got popular and became animated anyway, but who's to say? Me personally, I think this anime definitely deserves a remake, 100%. We had a very rushed ending, a very tragic finale for this, and a lot of exposition that just wasn't displayed. Like, compared to the manga, the anime skipped like about 2 or 3 arcs worth of content. And that just kind of leaves a bad sour taste in my mouth. So yeah, that's why I put this as number 1 for remakes. Up next, anime number 2, we have Tokyo Ghoul. Again, probably shocking absolutely no one. First season started off pretty fantastic when we go through Kaneki's transition into a half ghoul. Second season, he finally accepts the ghoul half of himself from a continuation of the first season. We're good on that. But then we go into the third season, and that's probably the beginning after the beginning of the end there, where we go straight into Kaneki, who's now going by Heisei, who lost all his memories and stuff. Alright, on the start on there, we kind of skipped the whole fight scene on how he became Heisei. Like, at some point, the pacing of this just started getting crazy. I don't know what the animators were thinking. The animated studios were thinking. We go on Tokyo Ghoul Ray, and then Ray 2, we just have a whole timeline skip that just skips a whole bunch of story to the point where it doesn't make sense. Like, we jump from point A to point C, or point A to point D. I mean, come on. The very final season was so bad. Everyone was basically in tears all over forums and internet and Reddit. Like, come on, we skipped all the way to a final showdown between those doves and Algiri Tree, and like, we don't even know how they found where Algiri lives, where their headquarters was. No, we just do a big skip. We skip a whole section of Kaneki being known as the Black Reaper, who he partners with, all the character development. Everything was just tragically lost and left for interpretation, which I think was done very poorly. So yeah, for obvious reasons like that, we have Tokyo Ghoul here on the list. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I feel like there was a huge amount of disappointment on how Tokyo Ghoul went. Number 3 on the list. Now, this might surprise some people, might surprise absolutely no one. The Promised Neverland. Now, the first season went along pretty great. Good pacing, good story. They do their, Emma and her crew work their magic, and then we have the sadness at the end there, and then we get into the second season when they start running into the forest. Of course, that's kind of how it goes in the original story too, and then it completely, utterly diverges. Now, I'm gonna try not to rant about the divergence of it, but again, just like with any other anime that decides to diverge from its original source, we get bad pacing, we get completely different storytelling that doesn't make any sense, and then we just get a lack of character development and a lack of story development, and to the point where we don't even get a third season just because of how much backlash it's getting now. And of course, that is why I'm putting Promised Neverland on 3 on the list right now. We still get our good old characters, we still get their quirks and their strengths and see them run for their lives. We still get some of the arcs that we're supposed to, but we miss out on so much disposition that it just makes it so hard to watch. Honestly, I think a lot of my friends couldn't even finish season 2 just because of how bad the pacing was. Next up on the list, we got an oldie but a goodie, Dead Man Wonderland. Now, if you were looking for an anime that was dark, filled with bloodshed, gore, and adult humor, this was top of the line. Now, I actually have no problems with the way it was animated or the storytelling of it whatsoever. My only thing is, I think it should definitely get a continuation or at least a reboot to continue it for this time and age, because it was a very entertaining anime that everyone loved. It was very tragic to see that this didn't get a second season or get love that it generally deserved, and I think it really should get more attention, especially now in this time when people didn't even get to watch this. A lot of people probably don't even know this exists now, especially those that came into anime around the late 2010s or maybe 2015 or something. Trust me when I say you're missing out if you haven't seen this, and I think we're also missing out that this isn't getting a continuation or reboot. Number 6 on the list is definitely one of those sleeper hitters. It's a non-mainstream one, Dream Eater Mary. Now, this one was a pretty awesome anime, and it wound up diverging, and it still wound up being pretty decent, but we wound up not getting a continuation. Dream Eater Mary is showing the main character who has the ability to kind of see people's dreams. Meanwhile, he's being haunted by dreams himself. The story goes on where he meets a young girl named Mary who turns out to be a dream demon, as dream demons are trying to take over the real human world and take over human bodies and live through them. The main character Mary and friends stop all these dream demons from taking over people's minds and their dreams and trying to save everyone else. Now, the story gives a good little epilogue or a prologue of what's to be expected on it. You know, they point out the big bad, they show their allegiance and all that stuff, but it starts diverging, making some anime only characters where they just leave it at that, and that just left a bad taste in my mouth, because now we're expecting more. We're seeing more, we get some cliffhangers, and we don't get any answers to the cliffhangers. This happens a lot with anime, and it's just so disappointing. But Dream Eater Mary being as entertaining as it is, definitely didn't really deserve to go out like that, and that's why I think it should get a reboot, especially now. Even if we get one in 2025 or in the near future, trust me when I say I will be very, very happy. Number 6 on the list, we got, and one of my personal favorites, Medaka Box. Now, okay, so this is an anime that wasn't disappointing at all, at least to me. This disappointed everyone else on the second season of it because it was kind of like not as exciting, or it was a pretty slow anime. Let me just say, there's always going to be anime that has a slower arc. The second season's actually where it picks up, and what really disappointed me on this is it was supposed to get a third season and it stopped, and the third season's where it was actually where it starts picking up. I mean, come on, they introduced probably one of my most favorite anime villains of all time, and then decided to cancel. They even had like an episode dedicated to him, and just never showed up again. I was so upset that they didn't continue this, that I was like in a depression for so long. I read the manga and everything. I wanted to see this animated. So I am praying, I mean, it probably will never happen, but I am praying it eventually gets a reboot. You know, fingers crossed, especially since they're rebooting a lot of older anime nowadays. Now, what I kind of want to see is they can start back from the beginning, new animation, go through the first season, second season. Hopefully people are okay with it. There's always going to be like a little downtime on it, and I will admit the first season of this starts off a little slow because it's in a school setting. Obviously, it's not a regular slice of life. No, everyone has hours, and then there's fight scenes where the main character Madaka is supposed to be seen as like the perfect person and all that. But then when we get into the second season, we get what's called the abnormals, who have special abilities, quote unquote, and actually try to take over the school and defeat Madaka. Third season, we're introduced, I'm gonna skip spoilers, we get introduced to probably her greatest foe and probably the most awesome anime villain ever, Misogi Kumagawa, with his power all fiction to turn anything in existence into nothing. He was always negative, always had an evil smile, and he lied as easy as breathing or drinking water. He was so twisted that when he fell in love with a girl, to make sure he didn't fall in love with her looks, he tore off her face, just to make sure that his love was real. He's what's known in anime as a minus. Now, the fact that they stopped before introducing this wonderful exposition of a villain just makes me cry, and I that's why I put this as number 6, because I strongly believe it should have a remake and that people would love it. And again, this whole list is in my opinion, so yeah, I'm gonna put it as number 6 because it didn't desperately need a reboot or remake as much as the first 3 do. But the disappointing part about this is just not seeing the best parts of this anime. Number 7 on the list, and you guys have probably heard me talk about this anime before in past videos, Princess Resurrection. Now, if there was a anime you wanted to watch for Halloween and you didn't want to be actually messed up, like comical and family oriented, then this was the anime for you. The anime is about the main character who goes to visit his sister, where he saves a blonde beauty in Gothic Lolita from dying from some sport abuse. He winds up dying instead, and as a gift, this girl, who turns out to be the Princess of Monsters, gives him what's called the Flame of Light. Now, the reason I want this anime to get a reboot is not only because it was unfinished, but because there's a lot of changes that kind of took away from the anime, so they couldn't actually continue it. For starters, Flame of Life, originally that's not supposed to come until much later in the story, and she was actually supposed to give him a drop of her blood. They don't really talk about her family or species, which in the original story, they kind of get into more about her family history and all that stuff. Of course, there was a lot more with the OVAs that came out, which everyone thought it was going to get a reboot, and the animation was certainly kind of eye-catching. But sadly, we only got those 3 specials and nothing else. Going into more of the story, we get to see more monsters, more of her family, and get to learn more of like that battle for the succession of the throne, as well as some of this story as well as getting into like time travel and whatnot. Now, again, I'm trying not to get into a whole rant on this, but it was definitely a story that I enjoyed watching, and I think it definitely deserves a remake or at least a reboot into the day and age now, especially for those getting into anime. They would definitely love to see this. It would definitely be a breath of fresh air. It does have a little bit of a gore factor, but in a comic sense. Next up, number 8. A lot of you have probably actually, a lot of my longtime anime fans have probably watched this and thought the ending was fine, but I believe it needs a reboot. Rosario and Vampire. Now getting into it a little bit, if you guys haven't heard, this is actually a little bit of an older anime, but just for those of you that don't know, Rosario Vampire starts off with the main character Skune, if I remember correctly, his name was, where he gets accepted into a prestigious school. Turns out that prestigious school is actually a school of monsters that want to like devour humans. So he has to keep his identity as a human secret. You do see a lot of antics, gags. It's got a bit of a slice of life, especially with the harem aspect. And it even gets even funnier, which each girl in his little harem actually has their own little quirks, such as like a snow woman, a succubus, and a vampire. And then you got a witch and some raven girl, whatever. We start getting a little bit more action towards the end of the first season, and then get quite a bit more action in the second season. Action by fighting. In case you degenerates were kind of trying to twist my words there. Action by fighting. At the end of the second season, he actually develops some certain powers himself, albeit a little bit borrowed. But later on in the story, if you continue with the manga, he actually gets more powers, and we get introduced to a lot more serious notions of the series. So to avoid any spoilers, if you're gonna want to go watch it yourself or read the manga yourselves, I'll just refrain from ranting about it. But we get a little like cool exposition, especially with the main character who gets all big and badass, and the anime kind of just changes along that in the end, which personally, even though it was pretty good, I for one would have liked it to continue on with the story as it should have been told, and that's why I put it on this list for reboot or remake. And that and the fact because it was pretty popular back when I first watched it, and a lot of people liked it, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to see it again and now in this day and age. And now number 9, we got Kaze no Stigma. Now this was a tragic end of that anime because it was confirmed to continue, then the creator sadly passed away and nobody picked it up again. Rest in peace, my heart goes out to that. But this was a pretty good anime featuring Kazuma, who was in a family of famous fire magic wielders, and were known as the strongest clan ever. But just like my career path, Kazuma turned out to be a complete failure to the family, in which case he was banished from the family and left. He eventually comes back years later, but this time as a wind user and known as the Contractor, and becomes very strong, cool, aloof, and I wouldn't say OP, but pretty damn awesome. Now, this anime had a good little intelligent talk of magic, and then you get your own comedy, and you get your family time, and then it goes right into the action. First season was great with its 24 episodes, but I would like to see a remake of it again now, and for someone to pick it up and it to be remade and then told to its entirety. And so I put this on the list. Now, last but not least, for number 10, we got the anime Beelzebub. Now, this was like this was like a sleeper hit. It was like pretty popular, the manga was at least, but the anime didn't get as much love as you would expect. And I think that's why towards the end in the final anime's arc, they decided to rush it and change it up a lot. Now, I think this one deserves a complete reboot when you're retelling the story of Olga and gang and Little Beale. And then towards the end, when they got the Jabberwock arc, they made a lot of changes that, I'll be honest, didn't really make sense, and it was just an abrupt ending that shouldn't have happened, where they could have continued and go on to way more of the story and just decided not to. So I decided to put Beelzebub here for number 10, even though the anime series was still good as a whole, there was still a lot left undone, and for that, it definitely belongs here. And again, this is my top 10, my own personal opinion. If anyone disagrees, feel free. Alright, well, now that concludes the video. If you enjoyed it, or if you agree or disagree, please leave a comment down below. If there's any other anime that you believe needs a reboot or remake, also leave a comment, send them my way so I can add them on the list as well, or go check them out myself. If you enjoy the content, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe to catch more anime content. I'll be doing more videos like this in the future, and I hope to see you all there soon. This is all Anime Joker, hoping all of you live your best life, and hope to see you soon.